If you've ever handed out a raise just because it's been another year, then this video is for you. I used to make comp decisions based on the gut. That led to resentment, misalignment, and total chaos within my teams. This is how I fixed it, with transparent pay scales that ties raises to real growth and not just time served in the company. Compensation should feel fair, motivating, predictable, but most agency founders are totally winging this. Raises happen randomly, reviews are super vague, and people start wondering if they're even moving forward. That's why we built a transparent pay scale for every role on our org chart. 4 levels, clear criteria, growth-based pay. It changed everything, and I'm going to show you exactly how it works. Hey guys, I'm Ben Gerster, and I scaled my digital marketing agency to over $400,000 a month in reoccurring revenue by using smart, scalable frameworks like the one I'm going to teach you in this video today. Now, when we talk about people and managing people in an agency, this is typically one of the most tricky, difficult, and most of the big headaches that we have as a founder is managing people, and especially when it comes to dealing with pay and compensation for our people. I got to the point where I was sick and tired of having a continuous negotiation and debate around pay, so I implemented a system that solved all of it. Let's start by looking at what does it look like without a pay scale, and you may be resonating with some of this because this is probably how you're running things currently. First and foremost, a pay scale is something that you may feel you have because you know, hey, we pay minimum for this role, we pay maximum for this role, and there's a range, it's a scale. That's not a scale. We're talking about clear ranges of pay based on a clear definition of proficiency in a role. So without that, what we have is no clear targets for why we give a raise and why somebody gets paid something. We're just judging it based on a gut impression of their experience. We have a constant negotiation situation happening where the employee always is wondering when they'll get a raise, why they're going to get a raise, why they didn't get a raise, how much should that raise be. All of that is up for negotiation at any given time. And we just have an undefined price process. So this is really challenging for the employee because they just don't even understand when they're getting raises and what's the logic and the decision-making criteria at the agency. It feels like a personal decision that the manager is going to make or the owner of the agency is going to make. And that's not a great place to be as an employee. That leads to a lot of frustration. Now that also leads to annual raises being based on time served in the company. It's been another year and I expect a raise just because I've been here breathing oxygen for another year. Now maybe somebody's been really great on your team and they are deserving of a raise, but that's most likely because there's merit. There is performance that backs that decision, not time in the company. The next thing is it's just expected. It's just one of those things that just because I've been at the company for that time, I'm going to expect a raise. And that's a difficult thing to deal with. Even if the company didn't grow at all, even if the company has zero forward progress, still expecting that raise because it's been a year. The other thing about this process is it's subjective and it's very challenging to deal with the inputs that employee is getting. Maybe they're looking online and they're looking at pay scales based on the role that they're in. Maybe they're talking to their friends or their parents or whoever is giving them input. Maybe they're getting it from TikTok as far as what they should be paid and how they should be negotiating their pay. All of this is very subjective, and that's not fair to you as a business owner, because your business is different than anybody else's business as it relates to your finances, as it relates to your opportunities, your growth goals, the client that you serve, the strategy you have in the marketplace, which dictates the talent level that you have, the pay opportunities, the opportunities to give raises, and how you retain employees. So no external factor is really going to be a fair basis for making this decision. And this is a really challenging thing to overcome when an employee brings that to you and uses that as a negotiation. And then finally, all of the decisions become custom. You're responding to all of this, and then you need to just figure out a way to keep that employee from leaving. So you come up with a custom number that's not predetermined, and you just check your finances to make sure you can get by paying them that, and you give them that raise. And that can be very dangerous. Employees talk, they're going to discuss pay to some degree with their fellow employees, and you may have just sent a brand new benchmark for a role that you've got 4 other people in that seat. They're all going to expect that same pay, or they're going to wonder why that person got it and they didn't. It's going to seem like favoritism in the agency. So these are a lot of problems that we can just flat out avoid if we have a pay scale in process, in implementation. So let's talk about what is a pay scale and how do we set them up and what's the rules around a pay scale. Number one, a pay scale is related to every single role in the company. Take a look at your org chart. If you don't have one, draw one. But every role that you have on your org chart, every position in the company should have a job description that clearly outlines what the expectations of that role are going to be, what the proficiencies in the role look like, and just the general responsibilities across the board for that role. And every one of those job descriptions gets its own pay scale related to that position that you've calculated based on what the business can afford for that position. But that pay scale, while yes, it has a minimum and a maximum, the range, we need to designate a few steps in between that outline what are the different levels of proficiency in this role and what is the pay for each of those levels of proficiency. Starting with a minimum level, which is typically the entry level proficiency in a role. This is somebody who doesn't have prior experience. They're being hired into this role to be trained on that role. They have the basic capabilities of doing the role, but they need to be trained and they need to have a lot of oversight as they do this role. Now, if I'm promoting from within, which is a great opportunity to create career development within our agency, most of the time they're coming directly into an entry-level position because they're getting a promotion to a role that they've never done before. So they start at the minimum, and that makes that conversation very easy because this is a preset range, and we let them know here's the opportunity, and what's exciting is the employee gets to see what the full opportunity looks like if they get great at this position and they move through these levels. So that's also a great way to just have a clear negotiation around pay, especially as you're recruiting somebody. You may not be able to start them at the number that they want to come into the company, but at least you can show them, hey, we're very committed to career growth here. We have a pay scale for every role. Our job is to help you move through these levels through great training and coaching from our team to make sure that you can make the maximum in this position. So that will help a lot in aligning the employee's expectations and the company's expectations. Level B is a development phase. This is somebody that is mostly proficient in the role. They are doing almost all of the tasks independently in that role, but they still require some level of oversight, and they're still training and still developing their skill in that role. The maturity phase, a level A, is somebody who has really reached that full proficiency in the role. They're doing it independently across the board 100%. They're getting good results. They're actually performing at a high level in the role. And so they're really at the maturity phase of the training process. The mastery phase means there's no more room for improvement. There isn't anything else that this person could do to become better in that position within reason. But they have truly mastered it to the point where now they are leading other people that are learning this position. So they may be handling some managerial, mid-level managerial responsibilities, training new people in the position, having oversight on some of the people that are in that position, and they are truly at the max capabilities within that role. And that obviously pays the most. So outlining what the annual salary is for each of these positions and levels and making those definitions very clear will set you up for success as you get to dealing with an annual review where you can have the opportunity to take somebody through the levels. Now, my philosophy is I make pay changes once a year. I do all annual reviews at the same time. I prefer to do those at the end of the year. I always want to know how we're ending up financially in that year before we commit to our next year's salary changes. So this is truly an annual process of looking at these levels. Every now and then there will be a situation where somebody qualifies for a level and there's an adjustment that gets made somehow in the middle of the year, but that is extremely rare. Usually it is always done in the annual review when we have an opportunity to go through this process. The annual review process that sets up a change in levels is a very important process. This is a peer-reviewed 360 review process in our agency. We send out a survey. Everybody fills that out for the people that they work with, and we are rating that person based on their alignment first and foremost, and most importantly, with our core values. That is essential. If somebody is going to advance in the company, they need to be aligned with core values. So we want feedback from everybody that's working with them, rating them on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being very aligned and 1 being not aligned with a core value on each of our core values. So we want to get that feedback. Number 2, we want to hear from their manager and from those that they work with about success indicators. Usually these are key accomplishments and the success indicators in terms of how they are operating on a day-to-day basis and where they are doing outstanding in that role. And then there is areas of opportunity. Areas of opportunity, these are areas that need improvement. And so we want to clearly understand, where are their deficiencies? Where do you still need to be trained up? And what still needs attention in your performance in your role? And then finally, based on all of this, we set a 1-year action plan. Now, the 1-year action plan designates to them what is expected of them if they're going to take another level up. How are we going to go from where they currently are to the next level? So if they come into this process and they have truly already leveled up since last year, if we made an action plan, they execute the action plan, they come into a review, they get great measurements on this, great marks on these areas, and they have truly hit that mark and they've moved themselves into one of these positions, then they get the salary change. They get leveled up, and that's how we deal with an annual pay raise. This is where we have growth-based pay. This is important. We want to tie pay to growth. You get a raise at this company because you are getting more proficient in your role, you are adding more value to the organization, and therefore you qualify for a raise. This is not just because you've sat in the role for another year. If you're not moving in your own development in that role, then the pay scale doesn't move either. This makes the conversation clear, transparent, and it makes it very much understood by all parties involved in the review process. This clarity creates alignment. Employees know what's expected of them. Managers know how to coach. And the organization knows how to budget, plan, and build a team around performance, not politics. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and follow along, because every week I drop a new video with new frameworks and systems that you can easily implement in your agency to level up and win the game. Until next time, stay focused, stay hungry, and keep hustling.